All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Spicher. This is Conversations on Retail, and we are so excited today to be joined by Nick Spicher, who's the VP of the Kroger team for the Harvest Group. And joining me today is a really good friend. I mean, has become a very, very close friend of mine, Yatin Shelar. He runs an e-commerce marketplace called Turtle's Egg and also runs another company called Rapid Retailing down in Naples, Florida. Just a tremendous, tremendous resource to the supplier community. He's done a lot of manufacturing, a lot of importing. So I'm super excited to have him here with me today, moderating some of these questions. There's been so much curiosity lately, ever since kind of chatter. It's been chatter that's been intensifying over several years, I guess, about the merger of Kroger and Albertsons. So we wanted to bring Nick on and kind of offer some commentary on sort of the current state of the union at Kroger, which is where he's got tremendous domain knowledge. But then also, based on what he's seen and what he's hearing and the conversations that he's participating in, what's the future look like in the near term and in the longer term? So Nick, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And I would love for you to start by just introducing yourself. We're very, very curious about, where you grew up and talk about your university experience maybe, and ultimately, how did you get into the business?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, Matt. And as I told you before we rolled, got a little bit of a cough, so just an advance warning. If I cough in your ear, I apologize. It'll happen more than once. I can tell you that my wife is already very annoyed by it. So we'll get that done. Yeah, I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so when you grow up in Cincinnati, Kroger and P&G are in your backyard. And so you kind of, CPG is in your blood. And so I actually started, my background is in public accounting, and worked in public accounting for 4 or 5 years, and then ultimately knew that I wanted to get to a point where I was working at P&G. That was a goal for me. And so entered the gates through finance, and then through that finance lens was actually doing customer team audits. And so we're going out, we were the bad guys, showing up at each of the retail customer teams, asking about how much trade spend they spent. And that's where I first got vision to the sales and consumer development side of this industry, and just became infatuated. This finance element married with being on the front lines. I ended up being on the Walmart team for P&G, and it was the Super Bowl every day. It was the biggest retailer and the biggest CPG. And so I just fell in love with it. So came in through finance, moved over to CBD or sales in Northwest Arkansas, calling on Walmart. And that's where I met Ross Cully, who started a founder and CEO of Harvest Group, which is where I work now. I fell in love with the vision that Harvest Group had of disrupting the broker industry by bringing a more concentrated, focused model, really ingrained in data analytics and technology, but didn't make a change at that point in time. Moved back to Cincinnati as a national sales manager on the Charmin business for P&G, and worked closely with Kroger, our account manager at Kroger. And I was in a meeting one day, a fateful meeting, and a director at Kroger said to me, if small and medium-sized brands could have the focus level of support that you have and the insights and analytics, they would take share from you left and right. I was like, I think that might be what Harvest Group is trying to do. And so similarly, at the same time, Ross was getting, and Harvest Group were getting pushed from their clients who they represented at Walmart to say, hey, we'd love this service at other retailers. So about 7 years ago, left P&G to start the Harvest Group office here in Cincinnati, focused on Kroger, and have been really fortunate to experience the highs and lows of the entrepreneurial journey of growing a business. So we've got about 25 people here. Harvest Group is about 250 people total. We cover Walmart, Sam's Club, Kroger, Target, Amazon, and Costco. And so really built to be able to lens across the industry as to what's going on. Obviously, you see Kroger's earnings today and Costco's earnings today really different in the way the consumer is shifting their trip and their purchase patterns. So I'm a fan of this industry. I'm a fan of studying the industry. I specifically love to see disruptor brands come and shake up categories because the market needs it. And so, excited to continue the conversation today.
Yeah. I've been in the supplier community for a very long time, worked closely with Ross and the team at the Harvest Group. And I'm gonna say this, I think it's important. I've never made a dime off of that relationship, darn it. But I have long considered the Harvest Group to be really the gold standard in the full service growth agency space, and just talk for a few minutes about what it is that makes Harvest unique. A lot of it has to do with culture. A lot of it has to do with values and principles as a company. Just talk for a few minutes about what it is that makes Harvest so special, please.
Yeah, thank you for those words. The first thing that I fell in love with when Ross's vision was culture. The first thing he ever told me about was the culture the company wanted to build. They wanted to build a values-led organization where values didn't just hang on a wall somewhere. They were lived and breathed in the day-to-day exercise of how you interact with your clients and how you interact with your teammates. And so that was the first and foremost part that I felt called to. The second part was really this disruptive nature to an industry that needed disruption. It really, as the industry evolved, there was a need for the approach that customer teams take, a multifunctional, dedicated approach, sales, marketing, insights, analytics, to be brought to smaller and medium-sized brands that were disrupting categories. And so for us, that means very tactically, it means our account management teams have 3 to 5 clients per team versus kind of a traditional 15 to 20. And it means that we built out technology that allows us to be, we call it trilingual, which is we focus on in-store.com and advertising. I think all 3 of those things, again, if you read the Kroger earnings report from today, they're highlighting Kroger Precision Marketing, they're highlighting the growth of .com, the digital business. And so that's our model. And then we customize it across every retailer we serve. And so this kind of one size fits all approach, like this is the way we do things across any retailer, we just saw as not evolving. And so we want to take that connected ecosystem of values-led organization, creating a culture where people can be comfortable being themselves, and then layer on top of it the same model that's customized at each retailer. Walmart's an EDLP retailer, Kroger's high-low. We spend a ton of time here focusing on cost per incremental case of promotions because of the number of promotions in-store, digital, all shop and marketing that go on a Kroger versus other retailers. So we knew we had to customize the model at each retailer we serve.
I'm going to ask one more question, then turn it over to Yatin. What would you consider your sweet spot when it comes to size, stage, category? And I guess it would probably be different on a retailer by retailer basis, but talk about your sweet spot, big picture, and then maybe throw out the name of a couple of brands that we would all know that you're working closely with in any of those chains.
Yeah, great question. We have 2 parts of our business model, and one, that fully dedicated customer team model is meant for brands that are in this growth life stage, we would say. So they've scaled, they've got distribution, they're maybe 2 or 3 years in. The retailer's starting to ask a lot more hard questions. If you're at Kroger, you're going through the CPI process. You've got more access to data than you ever have. Maybe the growth digits have gone from triple digits to double digits, things, and now it's just getting harder. You're getting into multiple categories. Supply chain has become harder. And so you look to your current provider and say, like, hey, I'm bumping up against the ceiling of what we're experiencing. I need more. That's where we come in, because we can provide that dedicated team of resources to help answer the most complex questions along that journey to scale. The second part of our business model is to launch brands at retail. And so we've been fortunate enough to be along the journey of brands that have launched. We've been able to go from that launch growth to scale journey. So those 2 different pieces, that first piece kind of funds our ability to invest in and be a part of the journey on launch brands. But if you're asking about our sweet spot, it's really that first piece where it's, we're really focused on providing dedicated resources to brands that are in that growth to scale journey and experiencing the complexity that takes. I'd say brands that you would know: Kodiak Cakes, Harry's, Suja Juice. We were a part of the journey with RX Bar and Halo Top, Bragg Apple Cider Vinegar, Endangered Species Chocolate. Nature Nate's Honey is a brand that we've worked with really since the beginning. We've had fun with brands like Kettle and Fire, where we launched them at Kroger, and now they've exploded across the entire retail landscape. And so we're really fortunate to have a lot of those disruptor brands that have taken sleepy categories and come in and say, hey, we think the modern consumer wants a little bit more than what we can deliver what's being delivered right now. So it's a lot of fun. The clients we get to work with make our job a lot of fun.
Nick, hello. This is Yatin. We want to thank you for joining us in spite of your cold. extremely impressed with your journey with P&G and then moving into working with Harvest. And what impressed me more is usually people that get to a certain level at Procter & Gamble usually don't want to walk away. And you took a bold move wanting to, and the words you used is helping small and medium-sized businesses. That's fantastic. It truly is a challenge for most businesses to grow outside the private label manufacturing if they don't have somebody like you helping them walk into the retailer buyer's office and take it from there. So from that standpoint, I'm sure on a daily basis, Harvest Group is bombarded with companies from startup to doing tremendous on a daily basis. What is your criteria in choosing who to work with and not?
Yeah, great one. Thank you for the kind words. It was a bold move. It was one I felt really called to do. So it didn't feel bold at the time because it felt so right to make the leap. So your question is an interesting one because we've had to evolve that over time. We have service is at our core, and so we want to say yes to everybody. But what we have to be careful is we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. So we're really cautious about the brand equity that Harvest has in the market, such that we don't want somebody to say, yeah, Harvest says they deliver excellence and they have this concentrated model. That's not what we experienced. And so we say no way more than we say yes. And so to that extent, we act a lot like what a private equity venture capital group would act like as we're evaluating clients. We're looking at, especially at the launch phase, but even beyond, what's the funding strategy? Do they have the ability to invest behind the brand once it's on shelf or to get from growth to scale? What's the talent of the team look like? Have they gotten to the point where they've hired professionals in to help scale the business? What's the innovation roadmap look like? For us, fortunately or unfortunately, we have to be able to keep the lights on. And so we've got to be like, can we be a part of growing this brand over the next 5 years? And what's their plan? Are they launching innovation? Are they investing in marketing? Are they investing in trade to align on growth? Then we've got to study the category. Do we think the category is headed in this direction? It gets really uncomfortable if you end up with a brand that the category has shifted away from that movement and the growth has slowed. Those are hard conversations and hard clients just because we have such a passion for growth. So I would say those things. We're looking at funding strategy, talent level of the organization. Would they be fun to work with? You're really culture match. We look at culture match. They align culturally and values with us. And then what's the innovation and growth roadmap, the expectations that they have. And the last one is we just want to make sure that our model fits the need of that client at that time. We want to be honest with ourselves to say, hey, we may not be the right folks for right now. We want to be, if in that case, we'll be cheerleaders from the sideline, cheering you on until we are the right team. But if we're not, we want to be very honest about that up front. But if we are, then we want to pursue that passionately.
Matt, I have a quick question. And from the standpoint of working with these newcomers, how deep do you go? Thanks for sharing regarding funding requirements and things like that. But how deep do you go? Do you have a merchandising team that works with the packaging, the pricing, and the whole bit?
Yeah, we'll go as far as the client will let us. So, and I mean that sincerely. The best case scenario for us across all of our clients is where we can partner with the multifunctional team inside the walls of the client. So if they'll let us get involved in innovation, have an opinion on package design and how many ounces and price per ounce and glass or plastic. And we can do that because one of the best things about retail is every retailer's strategy is on full display at the shelf. So we can walk a Kroger, Target, Walmart, Costco. We can look at Amazon and be like, all right, here's the lay of the category right now.
Right.
This is the price per ounce we need to be in. This is the format that everybody's currently in. This is the, things that they're calling out on pack. We love to be a part of that process as much as our clients will let us. Many times that is done by the time they reach us, and they're we're struggling to break down the barrier of Kroger. And so for us, we recognize the power of relationships, and we've been fortunate to build some great relationships at Kroger where we can make the connection. But for us, it's always say like, we can get you the meeting, but what are you gonna do with the meeting? We better be ready to tell a really robust story that meets the needs of Kroger strategy or Walmart strategy or Costco strategy. And then the last thing I'd say, try to give you the long-winded answer, is because now we cover Walmart, Sam's, Costco, Amazon, Kroger, I'm missing Target. Now we can start to build channel differentiation. My old school P&G days, the market strategy and planning role. Now we can start saying, hey, how are we going to differentiate in a SKU at Costco that isn't going to price compare versus SKU at Walmart, so that we don't kind of football the price in the marketplace? And so that's the really fun part for us, to start to play that strategic player across multiple retailers.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, great stuff. So we're gonna accelerate things a little bit. I think the introduction was really, really important because I wanted people I wanted folks to really understand who it is that you are, and frankly, why they should pay attention to you. But we're going to speed things up a little bit, and we're going to talk about what it is that makes Kroger's culture maybe different, culture in terms of how they are engaged and how business is done. I know in my professional upbringing with Walmart, Walmart's known for having a very strong culture, and your approach as a company and engaging them and doing business with them, what's expected of you is quite unique, maybe from other retailers. Not maybe, it definitely is. And so talk a little bit about some of the nuances, that what it is that makes Kroger different. And then if you can kind of roll the second question into that, which is, if you're on the outside looking at Kroger, what sort of options do you have? Obviously, you've got brick and mortar stores, but kind of talk about the different options for engaging in store, online, et cetera.
Yeah, let me maybe you can compare and contrast some of the culture differences between, I call it on Walmart. I've kind of been across all the retailers. I always say, I don't know if it's true or not, but large companies tend to take on the personality of the city in which they were founded. And Kroger was founded in a highly relationally conservative city of Cincinnati. Cincinnati, most of the companies, you think about P&G, Kroger, Cintas, they're all very conservative companies in the way that they're not big, bold risk takers. They typically, in a financial downturn, they tend to win because they're in a place where they haven't, they're not debt laden, they're not stretched too thin. So that's the culture of Kroger. You got a lot of folks who were born and raised in Cincinnati who are in leadership levels, in category manager levels at Kroger. What does that result in? At times, Kroger has been behind on innovation. They don't have a culture of taking big swings. You can walk into a Walmart and a Target right now. You can walk into a Costco right now and say, like, Walmart, Target, Costco are taking big swings. You've got 6-month end caps on DTC to retail brands that they're just taking a big bet on it. That's not the Kroger mantra. If you're a new brand going to market, most of the time, certainly they'll take some big swings. We've seen brands, I'd say I look at a brand like Goalie. I'm looking at some other brands where I've seen like Prime Beverage is another one, big end cap at Kroger. But typically you're in 400 stores to start, prove yourself, go to 1,200 stores year 2, prove yourself, go to 2,400 stores year 3. It's that real conservative approach financially. They don't get tied up in a bunch of inventory that they have to cut. The way they promote tends to be pretty conservative. They got some big swings now where the HDOs, hot digital offers they'll do, but corporately it's a very conservative structure. Over the last couple of years, though, under the leadership of Stuart Aitken. So Stuart Aitken raised up the dunnhumby, then 8451 organization, is now over at Kroger as the chief merchandising officer and chief marketing officer. His background is data. He's an innovation guy. Yale Cossett is their chief technology officer. He's not a Kroger legacy person. They are bringing a very innovative, dynamic, data-focused approach to category management and above. So we're seeing, companies like that don't shift overnight. We're seeing and experiencing a shift in the culture of what Stuart is pushing as you think about the utilization of data, the focus on utilizing Stratum data to tell stories, and then innovation. Kroger.com, the experience on Kroger.com from March of 2020 to now is markedly different. The investments in Kroger Precision Marketing, your ability to invest in targeted on-site ads and boosted search, and now they've got off-site and connected TV. Those didn't exist 2 years ago. And it has been gas pedal down to shift the culture towards a more modern approach to retail. And so that's slow, but it's happening. I would say the last thing, and I know we want to speed things along. When I called on Walmart, they were moving a little bit from that like raised in the store, become a category manager leadership level to outside leaders, maybe with a more like MBA background. And there's benefits to either of those. Kroger's starting that shift. They're moving a little bit away from our merchandisers we're raised in store to we're hiring, from MBAs, we're hiring from college graduates to take over categories, to be more analytically minded, more digital technology, digitally native category managers. So they're kind of following that path that Walmart went on, 7 to 10 years ago.
One more question, and Yatin, forgive me, because I this is where we kind of go a little bit freestyle, maybe, because I don't want to linger too long around this area of get on the shelf, because I think most people are going to have a lot more questions about what the what now, right? Like what's ahead. But I do think it's an important question. As Kroger and other retailers become more sophisticated in terms of measurement, does it make it more difficult for new brands to knock off the incumbent to get in, or is it easier because and the reason I ask that question is if Kroger has they're more conservative, you would think, well, they're going to be less likely to take a risk on a new brand. But if they're becoming more and more data driven, then the emotion of that decision maybe tends to go away over time. Do you have some thoughts on just the ease in which new brands are able to break in?
Yeah, we're mid-cycle on that change. And so a couple of points. There's an ease to it, or it's easier because of the divisional structure of Kroger. So for anyone who is trying to get distribution at Kroger, you must start centrally with the category manager. That I can't emphasize that enough. You will get in big trouble if you don't. Start with the category manager in Cincinnati. But if you're a brand that says, like, I don't have the pipeline to go to 2,400 stores, I really want to go to Ralph's, Smith's, King Soopers, Fred Meyer, 500 stores, 600 stores, I'm a natural product. You can get approval to go sell to those divisional levels. You can go to the divisional merchandising manager for your segment in King Soopers and Fred Meyer and say, hey, this is my story. I've been approved by the category manager to come out. They don't love to do that because all planograms are written here in Cincinnati. All decisions are funneled back here centrally. It's a centralized buying organization. So there is, it's a little bit easier in the sense that you've got these divisions that are willing to take in distribution. The harder part is it is becoming a very data-based organization, to your point. And so when you do get in, one thing I would say, we just heard Stuart Aiken say this at an event we hosted here in Cincinnati, said, units per store per week and dollars per store per week matter. But because of the robust consumer database that they have with Stratum, percent repeat purchase is a metric they are looking at that is like almost a full stop. He said, his quote to us was, if you've got a brand that people buy once and don't buy it again, you've got a niche product. But if we see that they buy it multiple times and they come back, now we're talking. Now we can lean into that brand. So I think as brands are looking and investing in data and saying, what do I need to monitor? Units per store per week and dollars per store per week are important. Obviously, contribution to the category, but percent repeat purchase rate is the metric that Kroger is looking at as it relates to new items and if they're winning or not.
Interesting. From the standpoint of what you described, starting out with the category manager, so obviously the product is the main focus, and if he's impressed with the actual quality of the product, whether it is food, its taste, or presentation, would you advise most of the newcomers, even if they are a startup, to experiment the business with King Super and Myers rather than trying to go too heavy with Kroger itself?
It really depends. It goes back to that, what's your funding strategy? What's the growth strategy? Can you support 2,400 stores right away? Because I'm not here to say Kroger won't take you full chain. We've seen it happen. They will if you're ready for it.
Okay.
The question, the short answer is yes. I would say most brands we work with, it's a slow rollout. It may not be 3 years, but it's like, let's go put all of our effort in some regions. We know we can invest KPM, we can invest trade, we can do some outside marketing to drive repeat rates at 500-600 stores to then scale beyond that. So the short answer is yes. The longer answer is you've got to build a long-term relationship with Kroger. And what right now matters, I would say every category manager we have right now, we've been through in CPG, we've been the last 10 years more since maybe let's call it Cliff Bar.
Mm-hmm.
The wave of innovation and disruption in every category has been none like we have seen it. We kind of got wave one the last 15 years. Right. So now every category has innovation. Every category has a disruptor. Every category has a DTC to retail brand. Now we're in this like halftime. Your funding has dried up. Funding's gotten more expensive. Contract manufacturing space is completely tied up with large CPGs. Inflation has caused consumers to shift back to private label. So now we're at this halftime. Like, what's the next wave of disruption from a brand space look like? And so category managers are saying, like, how is this any different? If you're a pasta sauce in a jar, like I got a lot of those, and I've got Raos that disrupted the category, and I've got the incumbent. Like, what's different? So with the lens that we see it, there was this rush of innovation. We were a part of it. Suja Juice, RX Bar, Halo Top, categories, sleepy categories full of incumbents that were disrupted. Mm-hmm. And now it's a bit on pause because of the state of the CPG industry right now, which is like, there's no money and there's no space to contract manufacturing. Contract manufacturers really were the ones driving a lot of the innovation for the last 15 years. Amazing brand builders just came on and built brands around the innovation that contract manufacturers had. So now we're in this halftime. So differentiation is going to become so critical. Not that it wasn't before, but the efficiency of space matters so much right now. That category has got to be efficient from a dollars per square inch standpoint. So the category managers are looking at innovation as a much more fine-tuned eye. All that leading back to that's why I would start in. Hey, I know I can really take market share in Denver. I'm going to go out to King Supers, nail that, have a story to tell. Now I've got a database story to tell to start expanding out from there.
How has the recent merger between Kroger and Albertsons affected your selling in?
Yeah, not yet. And based on the testimonies in front of Congress a couple days ago, I think it'll be a while. We were fortunate enough to meet with Stuart Aiken, again, chief merchant, right as that news came out. And I think the sense there was 2024 is like a best case scenario. Here's Nick's take, not facts. Kroger has spent the last 15 years trying to work on a centralized buying process. It's taken a heavy lift to move from divisional purchasing to centralized buying. They've built economies of scale through that. They've built great pricing strategies, great merchandising strategies. It's still a lot of kinks to work out. Albertsons is just somewhat early on in that process. They've got some of their categories and departments that are centralized buying. A lot of them are still decentralized. I think what Kroger sees is like, oh, can we take our centralized buying model, apply that to Albertsons, reach some economies of scale from just a system and processing and buying standpoint. And then I would say, I think the other piece of that I haven't read too much about, so again, more of an opinion. In fact, there's a lot of money to be made in these alternative profit streams, especially around retailer media. Now, Albertsons has a pretty robust retailer media program. Kroger has an amazing retailer media program in KPM. I think they see some synergies. Anytime Kroger makes an acquisition, historically, it's for one or two unique reasons. I think Harris Teeter was like, hey, we want to be on the East Coast, but also Harris Teeter had a great .com platform or a pickup platform. That's where ClickList was born in Harris Teeter. And they acquired it really for that. Vitacost, the acquisition of Vitacost was because Vitacost was a great digital platform that they could build Kroger.com off of. Safeway Albertsons does a couple things. It gets them national. Now they've got national footprint coverage. They've got a great retailer media program, and there's ability to get some efficiencies of scale and buying centrally. But I think it's going to be it'll be a couple of years before it really changes our business. We're kind of head down right now, thinking we'll just we'll try to stay out in front of it, but just press on here in Cincinnati for now.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yep.
So two of the things that really matter a lot to suppliers once they're in, right, is on-shelf availability and driving product demand. Talk a little bit about maybe both of those buckets and some of the tools that you have as a Kroger supplier, and maybe some of the tools that you're the most excited about, or some of the innovation that's come. You've touched on those at a high level, but dig a little bit deeper in terms of on-shelf availability and driving demand at Kroger.
Yeah, tackle them one at a time. On-shelf availability, kind of supply chain support. Kroger has again, maybe comparing to Walmart, I think if it's still run this way. When you were a supplier meeting with Walmart, the team you met with was the buyer, then the replenishment manager who was writing the orders. They were in the room together. They were, okay, made this distribution decision. What are we buying? What's our open to buy dollars? The way Kroger operates, you've got a category manager who's like the buyer, but then the buying office who's writing orders, forecasting, demand planning is a separate organization here in Blue Ash. They call it Kroger Blue Ash, that they operate completely independently. And so you've got to develop relationships at both a merchandising standpoint and a Kroger Blue Ash level. They're different organizations. And so we've been fortunate enough over the last 3 years as supply chain has become really a more critical piece of the business. Some of the things that have happened, I'll try to do this quickly. Historically, Kroger's buying systems were automatic. There was automatic. They had automatic buying based on some technology they had. And the buyers at Blue Ash were just making changes when things broke. Like, oh, that happened. We got this, flip this lever. COVID and supply chain broke the automatic buying system. So now you've got buyers who are buying for thousands and thousands of items for multiple divisions at multiple DCs manually. Well, that's a mess. And so that became more important for suppliers to come along and say, like, hey, we can help. So we've developed, throughout, the ability to take data, put into a cloud-based database and a visualization software. We can now meet with these Blue Ash buyers and say, hey, we've done some work on a granular level. This is the forecast we'd recommend. This is the demand planning. These are the levers we would pull. And now, instead of where that looked like they're almost like get out of our way. Now these buyers at Blue Ash are like, okay, thank you. We've got some folks who we've hired who were former Kroger Blue Ash buyers. They were buying for 1,500 items at 6 or 7 divisions manually. And so we've had to build tools that we can then go to these buyers and say, we'll just take the work off your plate. We're not overloading you with inventory. We know that gets us kicked out right away, but we can see the end-to-end supply chain process. Let us help you. And so that's been a major change we've made in our service model over the last 2 years, utilizing technology to help influence that Kroger Blue Ash organization. Then from driving demand, one of the main differences, again, as I think about Walmart and even Target, is Kroger has so many opportunities to drive demand. They expect you to invest in trade, 16 weeks promotion a year, if not more. They're going to come to you with hot digital offers that'll drive off-shelf opportunities. But then you've got 8451 that has best customer communications. They call them loyal customer mailers and My Mags. They're going to expect you to invest in that. They're going to expect you to invest in the data to know what's going on. They're going to expect you to invest in Kroger Precision Marketing. There are so the work that we do, as I mentioned, is what we always say, what can we do? What should we do? Did it work? And what do we do next? Those are the 4 questions we're constantly asking. Let's look at what we can do across the entire ecosystem based on the life stage of our brand, the goals of the brand. What should we do? We've got to evaluate, did it work? Should it be more depth, less frequency? Should it be more frequency, less depth? Should we take the HDO offer? That's the complexity of working at a high-low retailer or a hybrid retailer that we're seeing, and that's where we spend the significant part of our time. And that's the next level. When I talked about earlier, the complexity, once you sell it in, we can all high five for 5 to 10 minutes. It's like, now the real hard work begins. So we've got to get this stuff to sell. So yeah.
What you just mentioned pretty much answered my next question. And Matt touched on it earlier on about the culture of Harvest Group per se. But hearing what you said about how you're doing half the work for the category managers and for the buyers, that pretty much endears you to them. It's almost a partnership, a no-cost knowledge sharing. So you guys have created, I can see why there's success and growth is because you guys have created a dependency on you.
Well, we say right now, more than ever, that's dramatic, maybe not more than ever. Our number one opportunity to get FaceTime with a category manager is solve for a capacity constraint. They are overwhelmed. They've got more to do than ever before. They're doing it remotely. The world is as complex as it ever has been in retail. If we can solve for a capacity constraint, if we can ask, hey, what question can I answer for you? One of the beautiful things about Kroger is the data you get is category level data. So it's not just the big guys that have access to the data. You get the category level data. So I can go to a category manager with the tools that we've created and say, what do you want to know? What's going on at Ralph's? What's going on at Fred Meyer? If this promotional strategy works for this one, we've got category managers where we're helping them define their strategy for the year. They come to us, say, hey, we'd love you to dive in and say, what do you think the category strategy should look like? Because, again, at this event we hosted in Cincinnati, we asked 3 category managers, hey, tell us about your strategy development process. And they were like, what? Like, who has time for strategy development? Like, we're in the weeds all the time. Well, we can do that. We have time for that. Our clients pay us to do that. And so we ask our account managers at all times, like, understand what is the capacity constraint that you can solve for our category managers, to your point, that endears us and that builds trust. We do not want to take a brand level approach, take a category level approach, and just build trust step by step, utilizing fact-based analysis of the category.
What do you advise a supplier from a standpoint of maintaining a certain level of margins so that the ACOS can be affordable and all the demands by Kroger can be done?
That's a hard question. I'll just give you some examples. I would say the expectation you should have is, on average, these are averages. On average, the margin Kroger is going to expect to get in the door is roughly a mid-30s, low to mid-30s on average. Okay. So you got to plan for that. And then you've got to plan a trade spend, just like base trade spend, 16 weeks of promotion on, it's called Yellow Tag at Kroger. It's got to be at least 15%. They won't accept it if it's not 15%. It's got to be at least 15%. Then you're going to have, I know nobody likes to talk about it. You're going to have slotting fees. Slotting is mandatory at this point. And then you've got your investment. They're going to have to invest in least bronze level data through Stratum, which can be $15,000, $20,000. And then you've got a little bit of expected investment in the BCCs and KPM. They expect KPM generally expects 2% of POS to be invested in KPM. Okay. So, like, when you are talking about like building margin structure, you got to walk in eyes open, knowing all of that as you're developing your cost of goods to deliver a product to Kroger. We've had a lot of experiences where people are like, yeah, 35 margin, I can do that. Great, that works. Like, well, hold on, hold on. That's just to like get a new item approval. Now the real work starts from an investment standpoint. So it can be very complex. But again, that's the work that we help our clients do.
Thanks for explaining that. Most suppliers don't see it that far. They ask a very basic question: retailer margin.
A lot of these entrepreneurs have developed a product, and they're like, "I'm just so passionate about selling this product in the Kroger. Let's go." 100 stores? Yeah, I can do that. And all of a sudden, like, like, time out. Like, we got to talk about how that's actually going to work.
I have one more question, Matt. Is Nick, if your group that manages Kroger and the overall Harvest groups sell into, whether it is Costco, whether it is, do you guys ever come up with, hey, we wish we had this product? I mean, do you build a wish list and go chase it?
One, yes. Our new business development team, 100% we're evaluating categories and brands and trends. And honestly, places where we have deep relationships where we can go to brands and say, like, we know the category manager, director, and vice president very well. That's one. Two, the hardest part, as I mentioned when we started, about our model is we say no more than we say yes. There are brands, I won't mention here, that we've said no to that are now very, very developed brands. And so there are definitely pain points when you say, like, gosh, we just don't see it. Don't know if we can grow as fast enough to make it make sense to us. And then they go and do it. And it's like, ouch. And so, yes, for us, we've constantly, we invest in reports from Mintel as well as IRI panel. And so we're constantly staying ahead in line with trends. And then we're students of the game. We're doing store walks. We're saying, like, hey, what is that brand? And if we can find and identify that brand that is past launch, like I said in the front, they've been there 2 years, and all of a sudden we start to see, like, ooh, we see some chinks in the armor. The promotional strategy seems off. They're not, they're out of stock. That's where we can almost proactively reach out and say, hey, I think we might have some ways to help some of the issues that we think you're seeing. So yeah, that's our job, is to stay out in front of it and see what's coming next.
Financial ability seems to be one of the major criterias in you guys taking somebody over, but could it be a startup with you saying, okay, if you guys have this kind of money, we can work this out, or we can give it a try?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a brand that we work with right now that we're in the process of working with. You can't use the name, but is a fully funded startup with an amazing product that is kind of has a high quality team, super skilled CPG background. And it's a brand that we believe has a chance to be the next big thing in the category. So certainly funding matters, but it's not the anchor piece of information for us. We kind of have a scale that we say, like, red, yellow, green, 7 metrics, and then the algorithm says, like, yeah. And even then, this is a relationship business. Oftentimes these startups that come to us, we've worked with, they were a client in the past who went to a new startup and they're like, hey, we want to work together again. And of course we want to work together again. Our job, my job, the hardest part of our job is, at the end of the day, for us, oftentimes in this industry, people forget that we have a P&L as well. It's like, we've got to be like, oh man, we are putting resources and capital against these businesses. And so as much as I'd love to say yes to everybody we talk to, because there's just so many times it's great people and an entrepreneur you want to see succeed. So that's certainly the hardest part, is wanting to help, but also knowing, stretching the team too thin. We don't want to lose the core equity of our model, which is a more streamlined number of clients on a team, on a client team.
Nick, I could keep you here till 9 o'clock and still not be done, but I understand you have to pick up your boys, and so I'll let Matt ask a couple of questions if he has any. And
yeah, just a couple more questions, and we're going to let you go score some daddy points. So the first question is from our friend Mike Bach, another great friend for a very long time. And Mike starts with his question by agreeing wholeheartedly with my view that Harvest is gold standard. Mike's curious how Kroger is viewing entry into Florida. What are they learning, particularly on how to compete in a strong Publix and Walmart marketplace?
Great question. I'll try to answer quickly. So that's through their investment in Ocado. Ocado is a European technology company that created automated warehouses that creates the ability to do packing and shipping faster and more efficient than Kroger believes than anyone else. They've invested hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of creating these Ocado sheds, is what they call them, CFCs. And one of the first ones they rolled out was in Florida. And so it's a hub and spoke model. You've got the hub in Tampa, and then you've got 3 spokes across Florida. The only reason they did that, the strategic reason they did that, was to enter the market in Florida without having to build a couple hundred brick and mortar stores. The feedback that we're getting, one, they've opened 6 this year, they'll open 6 more next year. That investment it's on the payout cycle now. The size of the business is small. It is, but it's like digital 10 years ago where you're like, gosh, it's not that big. Should I invest there? It's a number one investment. You can read the earnings release today. It's the third thing they mentioned. It's working from all signs from what our clients see. Again, not big. It's not big business, but all report out, excuse me, on that setup specifically in Florida is they're taking market share, little bits of market share, specifically from Publix. That's the first one. They've really started to groove the process, groove the item selection. It's that's still a little bit of the hard part. Is even as somebody who represent over 25 brands, it's not super clear. It's not like, oh, I got into Ralph's, King Soopers, and Ocado Sheds. It's a little bit unclear how item selection is happening. But to answer Mike's question directly, that is a direct play at competing against Publix without having to build 150 stores in Florida. And from all signs, it's working on the scale that they've built it today. If you haven't Googled Ocado warehouse video, there are some videos on YouTube that take you inside one of those Ocado warehouses. It is unbelievable. So worth the watch.
So another friend wants to know what floor your buyer meeting is on. He said, don't make you answer. My last question is why are you the most excited right now? Why should a company be excited now about doing business with Kroger in terms of some of the levers that you've talked about, whether it's driving demand or whether it's on-shelf availability? How is it that whatever factor it is, why would now be a super exciting time to be doing business with Kroger?
Yeah, I point to three things. We've talked about all three of them, fortunately. 4 years ago, a market observer could see like, hey, Kroger's behind on their digital investment. They have no plan. They have no plans to roll out any form of ship to home platform, and their buying decisions are antiquated. And so really, since Stuart has taken over as chief merchant and chief marketing officer, they've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in Ocado, and one of their main strategies is seamless. One of their growth pools. You can go to the store and get it. You can pull your car up and get it. You can ship to home via Instacart. You can ship to home via Kroger, a Kroger warehouse, and you can ship to home in non-brick and mortar stores via Ocado. You can get Kroger, ship, buy it however you possibly want. That's one. And those investments are just entering the payout cycle. That's been hundreds of millions invested over the last 3 years. It's just now taking off. Two, the way they're making decisions now, the way Stuart has pushed the merchandising team to utilize Stratum data to analyze the category, to have a category strategy, to hire folks who are more analytically and digitally native, that's changing the way they go to business. They're smarter, they're more strategic. And third, as you think about the investment and moving forward in the digital and advertising space, KPM is leaps and bounds ahead of where they were 3 years ago. That's still a startup. I mean, that's still a startup under a big company, but they've got plans to accentuate the ability to drive Kroger.com sales through the investment in KPM. And so if I look at all three of those things, if I'm a brand today and I'm like evaluating like what's the trajectory up and to the right, you want to look at like what retailers have made investments that are getting ready to pay out. On my sake, being here as close to as we are, I see the next 1 to 3 years that all of these investments they've made. If you read paragraph 1 of the earnings release today, they say, hey, we are continuing to be cash flow positive to invest that back into the business to drive differentiated growth in fresh, digital, and alternative profit streams. And they're doing all three of those things. And I think it's just getting ready to pay off. And you can see in the earnings report today that it did. That trip consolidation is happening. Kroger doesn't typically win in trip consolidation periods, and they are winning now, especially in that premium loyal consumer. So yeah, it's an exciting time. I'm obviously passionate about it, and hoping I'm right. We'll see.
Yeah. Very good. As we say so long, tell us what's the very best way should someone want to engage the Harvest Group and learn more about your capabilities, especially as they relate to doing business with Kroger.
Yeah, I love that people reach out to me. So my email is nspicher. Now you'll have SPICHER at harvestgroup.com. specifically to talk Kroger. And then we've got a general email for inbound inquiries. It's just hello@harvestgroup.com. We as much as I said twice, we say no more, more than we say yes. One of the things we love to do is just help. So even if we jump on a call and even if we can't work together, if it's like, hey, I've got 3 questions, what's this slotting thing? How many promotional weeks do I need to have? And can you help me contact somebody from KPM? Happy to do that. That's one of the reasons we exist, is to serve folks who are trying to do business across the cover.
Great. Nick Spicher, VP of the Kroger team at the Harvest Group. Thank you so much for making the time to be here today. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Nick. Great talking to you.